Hello all, I'm Scarlopez CS, but that's not important right now, as in this episode of Cogs, Gears and Optic Sensors, we are looking at the Decepticon Dambusters storyline from issues 29 and 30 of the Marvel UK title, released way back when in the September and October of 1985. Brought to us by Simon Furman and with art by John Stokes, this story borrows heavily from the Season 1 episode More Than Meets the Eye Part 2, and is one of the first UK stories to really make an effort in referencing the ongoing events in the US book, as our first page depicts the battle between the Dinobots and Megatron from US issue 8 on a news broadcast in a bar, and then our somewhat sceptical patron encounters Grimlock on his way back from that very same confrontation, only to understandably run away, but unfortunately straight into the leg of one of the other team members. How he didn't hear or see them, I'm not entirely sure, but we'll just put that one down to because plot. The Dinobots bemoan that they aren't overly impressed with the humans thus far, and I will suggest it's a bad day in the office if you're being critiqued on your smarts by Slag and Sludge. But thinking he's saved by the arrival of an emergency services vehicle, our unsuspecting customer tries to flag it down for help, only for it to, unsurprisingly from the reader's perspective, transform into Ratchet, who makes attempts to apologise for his colleagues, but to no avail, as the human runs away screaming in terror. So much for human Autobot relations. As Ratchet decides to give the Dinobots some, what we could politely describe as developmental feedback around their said communication style, and through a flashback storytelling device, he then relays portions of the events of the cartoon to the Dinobots and to the reader to subsequently convey his point. And as the Decepticons look to recreate a tidal wave, in an attempt to push the dam beyond capacity, Megatron, not being one for tact or diplomacy, bursts through the wall of the facility and gives the human workers a familiar ultimatum to do his bidding or meet an untimely end. But one plucky foreman needs to tell the reader what's happening, and as he argues with the Decepticon leader and explains the consequences, it's revealed that Rumble is currently pile driving his way through the floor of the riverbed. Megatron does indeed intend to take all the energy from the power station, with sustainability clearly not on his agenda, and Optimus Prime and the Autobots turn up just in time to see the cracks appearing in the walls of the structure. Now, it's worth pointing out at this stage, we are seeing some far more cohesive character designs in the UK production, although we're still getting the interpretation of the yellow-chested Megatron based off the lighting of his box art, so we're not quite there yet, but that will come in future issues. We also get to see some of the story beats from the cartoon, as Hound enters the water to confront Rumble at the behest of Optimus Prime, although not at the behest of Spike, which does deprive of us one of the most memeable screen caps from the whole of the G1 cartoon. Such a shame. But as Hound is about to confront the mini cassette, the reader's attention is turned to the two faction leaders and their inevitable showdown, as Megatron deploys his now pretty ubiquitous Energon mace as he challenges Optimus to hand combat, with Optimus only too happy to respond by deploying his now infamous Energon axe. Now, before we move on, folks, I do want to point out that the only time these weapons were used were in More Than Meets the Eye Episode 2. They didn't reappear properly until they were used as accessories in the 2002-2003 Transformers collection by Takara, and they've been a mainstay of both the leaders' arsenals since then. The cartoon nods continue, with Furman even managing to borrow some of the dialogue straight out of this scene.
You're old, Megatron. Yesterday's model, ready for the scrap heap.
Back underwater though, and Hound is still having a hard time with Rumble, who effectively hurls him out of the river, catching Optimus off guard, who glances across out of concern for his comrade, to which Megatron unsurprisingly takes full advantage, backhanding Prime over the edge of the dam, much to the chagrin of his fellow Autobots, who can only helplessly watch as he plummets over the side towards the water below. Now, don't forget, this story was told across 2 issues in the UK title, and at this midpoint we do get a quick recap page as Ratchet resumes his narration to the Dinobots that he's recounting to. Prime, though, manages to survive his fall to the bottom of the reservoir and is pulled to safety by his team just as Megatron wastes no time in transforming into gun mode and hovers above the dam, unleashing one single well-placed shot, bursting it open as the Autobots look on in shock, with self-preservation clearly not high on the agenda as Prime then delegates to Prowl to start assigning tasks. Ratchet manages to bring Hound back online just before they're swept away by the torrent of water, and as the Autobots gather together to bring their own makeshift dam into play, which as we turn the page to see the rocks cascading straight down into formation in an attempt to save the day. But they can't contain it for long, as water will always find a way through, and as the Autobots break away into different groups and put their alt modes and height advantages to good use to keep the local human populace out of harm's way. And I love the framing on this next page, which literally lifts the sequence directly out of the cartoon, as Ironhide and Bumblebee laser some trenches out to divert the water well away.
Let's go!
But just as Prime is debriefed by Prowl and Mirage thinks that the day has gone rather well, he is met with some hostility from the humans who, to circle back to the very start of the story, can't tell the Autobots from the Decepticons, and Mirage, having a couple of circuits that have overheated, gives the crowd a full-on piece of his circuit board, only to be reined in by Prime and undoing all the good work that the Autobots have just done. And as Ratchet explains again, that some humans can't tell the difference, which Furman circles nicely into this excerpt from US number 8, as we, the reader, get to see Josie Bella flex her Nintendo Power Glove and GB Blackrock looks over his anti-robotic photonic multi-cannon.
I love the Power Glove. It's so bad.
So, as the story starts to bring to a close, and Swoop looks to make a landing back at the Ark, he is scanned by an unknown figure, and despite being recognised as an Autobot, he gets a swift knock to the Control-Alt-Delete keys and is offlined by someone who is revealed to be the Guardian robot from the Raiders of the Last Ark story, although not entirely adhering to his programming as Autobot security, which leads us nicely into the next UK story arc. And that, folks, concludes our walkthrough of Decepticon Dambusters. And I always wondered if the reason Swoop got taken out of the end of this story, as opposed to any of the other Dinobots, is because his toy wasn't available here in the UK. Let me know your thoughts about that in the comments. There are also two distinct covers for this issue, the first by Man of Iron's John Ridgway, and the second by Ladybird Books' Mike Collins. This story was also reprinted in the Collected Comics, with this all-new artwork by Jeff Sr. featuring those energy weapons again. So thanks for watching along to the end. Please consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video. And if you didn't like it, leave one anyway. If you want to say hi on social media, you can find me here. But whatever you do, folks, stay safe.